Olá, sejam bem-vindos e bem-vindas. Esse é o C-Level, programa semanal de entrevistas da Folha com personagens da política e da economia. Hoje temos um convidado especial, o comissário de Parcerias Internacionais da União Europeia, Jozef Síkela. Commissioner, nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to talk.
It's a pleasure for me.
Thank you to talk with Folha de São Paulo. I would like to start with a general question. What are the reasons of your visit to Brazil? And there are investments to announce after your meetings, your visit here? Thank you very much again.
There are a few reasons. The first one is a momentum. Yeah? We experience a huge change in geopolitics. Some old things are falling apart. There is a trend to a politics of might and transactional approach, and I think in these times to deepen or even to move to a next level, strategic partnerships is extremely important, and this is basically the main reason of my visit here, because Brazil is the most strategic partner of Europe of European Union in Latin America. The second reason is, of course, the momentum of the Mercosur, which creates a completely new foundation for future development, future collaborations, future opportunities together. And the third area are concrete projects. I visited in Sao Paulo the Metro Station 6, which is basically being developed by three major European vendors and plenty of other European companies from France, Germany, and Spain, with support of the European financial institutions. Basically, when it comes to public transport, I think a game changer for mainly the young population in Rio. So after being finished, it will commute 630,000 people, bring there to the universities and to the jobs. And personally, a university line is a great one. I was visiting in Minas Gerais the Veridis Solvay project, where basically the Australian and European companies are teaming up in processing of the rare earths in a very sustainable way, based on our values, based on our standards, following also the social aspects in the region, the succession, the environmental approach, and using the most advanced technologies we have here in Brasilia. The European Union Brazilian Business Forum, and basically the commitment which we signed for other projects, the connectivity, basically the Ela Link project and the extension to the Amazon, are simply projects which are changing the life of the peoples. And as a former banker, I always liked projects which are changing the lives and changing the economies.
And why the EU sees Brazil as a partner for raw materials and critical minerals in special? What's the profile of projects you are looking for to invest and to support in Brazil?
Look, the first thing, and this is basically the foundation, is the Brazil's commitment to sustainability. Yeah? Because Europe is by far the biggest investor in climate and sustainability. We are inventing new technologies, and we are sometimes criticized for this because not all the countries are following this approach. Yeah? The US, they have their view. China is staying the biggest polluter of this planet. And this is basically the fact. We are the investor, and we share this view with Brazil. We also share the multilateralism and the rule of law and the democratic principles. So this is basically the foundation of the joint or common values. Brazil is a very rich continent with a lot of energy and huge industrial ambition, this neo-industrialization. And this neo-industrialization should be a clean industrialization. And for this you need new energy resources, best place to be, sun, wind, hydro. You need critical resources, but what you need is basically to create a local value chains, to create a supply chains, and to have access to the regional and the global markets. Simply to move from the low margin business to a higher margin business. And this is basically why we want to have this strategic partnership with Brasilia, because what we can do is we can come with technologies, the most advanced technologies with know-how transfer, with training, with basically training and educating local people, and to create basically and to bring a stability, to create a value chains and supply chains where basically both will benefit. Brazil, because we'll get a new productions, more refining, more value creation here locally, and we will get a stable partner, stable supplies based on the off-takes agreements, and Brazil is, when it comes to critical raw materials and rare earths, a rich continent. So it has basically plenty of dimensions why we are here and why we believe that this value proposition is beneficial for both, for Europe and for Brazil.
Commissioner, thinking on the next years, medium term and long term, how much is possible to expect it about investments of European Union in Brazil, and especially in critical materials and critical minerals and raw materials?
Honestly, the sky is the limit. We are talking about, together with Mercosur, about a market of 750 million people. Of course, we cannot work just with the public money, because public money will never ever be able to support this development and to cover the gaps we have, for example, when it comes to sustainable development goals. But our role, my role, the Commission's role, the Brazilian authorities' role is to mobilize, to catalyze private investments. And we can do this together. We can basically de-risk. We can come with blended products. We can help with the good governance, with basically a legal environment which will become more investment friendly. And that just to get you a rough feeling, we are talking about the yearly gap in sustainable development goals. This is a 4 trillion. It's a huge amount. But if you just look on the world's biggest asset managers on this planet, and if you take basically the first 2 or 3, you will go far above 20 trillion. So basically, when we will be successful to create a more investment-friendly environment together, then it doesn't. We does not need to talk about the money terms. And what is even more important, there are things you cannot measure in dollars or in euros. And this is the human-centric approach. So this is about not investing only in the hard assets, but about investing in education, in healthcare. And this is basically and here is Europe the superpower. Here is the Europe by far the leading continent. When you take the Human Development Index, the 30 countries, the 30 top countries, 20 of them are European. So basically the ability to create the value and to transform the value in the well-being. And I think here we can contribute a lot. And as I said, the foundation is given by the fact that we share with Brazil the fundamental values.
But can we have direct investment from the EU, or we are looking for just creating the environment for private companies?
I am not the equity provider, but I can come with the grants. We today signed on the stage direct investments where basically we support, but usually it works in the way that my DG, the Commission is coming with the grant, and the grant is creating foundation for blended products, for guarantees provided, for example, by the EIB or other European development banks, very often like a 10 times multiple. Yeah? So 50 million is then basically transferred in the 500 million euro guarantee frame, which is then usually multiplying the private investments against tens up to 15 times. Yeah? So we have to look what is basically the final amount. And talking about this, basically the initial aim of the Global Gateway, our investment strategy was to invest above 200 billion together. Yeah? The Team Europe, the Commission, the European institutions, and the European businesses. We are far above this amount, and we increased recently the target to 400 billion. Yeah.
Do you believe there are interests to invest in infrastructure like railroads, energy, and other areas?
When it comes to Global Gateway, this is one of the pillars. Yeah? When we are talking about the pillars of the Global Gateway, when it comes to hard assets investments, we are talking about clean energy, hydropower, renewables, wind and solar, grid as a precondition. This is my personal law. There is not transition without transmission. So you basically need to have to transfer the energy from the source of the origin to the final consumer. You need to balance it. So clean energy, connectivity, digitalization, cable, satellite solutions, undersea cables. Very important for education, for training, for access to the internet, for data security. And of course also for like a computing centers and artificial intelligence. Transport, railways, transport corridors, which are basically connecting the areas of the source with the hubs, which are then allowing the goods basically to reach the final customer. Ports, extremely important part of our agenda. But of course, water management is very important, basically, how we treat the water in the future. Maybe not an issue in Brazil, but definitely an issue in other countries in Latin America and mainly in Africa. And then basically the important part of like a society needs, and this is healthcare and education. This is something we should not forget. So my response to a short answer after the long answer, definitely railways and transport corridors and infrastructure, public transport are of utmost interest for us. And I think one of the areas where we can collaborate and where we also have the state-of-art technologies we can deliver. Yeah.
And we are talking about this environment. We need to talk about the EU-Mercosur agreement. Do you see any direct impact of this agreement to Europe or to the relations between the private sector in both
Well, I think the impact will be much higher than it was basically the outcome of the analysis, because I think that the more obstacles, barriers, and tariffs you remove, the faster is business growing. I'm coming from one of the most open economies in the world. The Czech Republic economic success is purely based on trade. As a former Minister of Industry, Trade and Energy, I was a big supporter of Mercosur, and I am extremely happy that after decades we basically managed to push it through, despite the fact that plenty of things were politicized. I think that this is a very strong signal for the whole region in this world where some of other countries believes that they can solve through the tariffs the missing tax incomes in their domestic economies.
Commissioner, one last question.
So, and of course, if we are talking about the tariffs we are talking about a 4 billion euro. So this is basically the amount the companies can invest in science, research, new products, and. So this is basically what will stay in the business and will help the businesses to grow.
One last question by my part here. Recently, we saw the European Union impose restrictions to Brazilian meat, soy, and steel. I would like to ask you if you believe that the doors are open to negotiate, and what Brazil can do until the.
So you use two words, restrictions, where I disagree, and Brazil. So first, these are not restrictions. And second, basically, this is not about Brazil. These are basically the common standards in Europe. In Europe, basically, when you produce food and products from animals, you have to prove that there are not these microbiotics which are basically either to help, which are helping to grow. So which are basically speeding up the natural process or basically helping to generate a higher yield transferred in the money, and which are not being used or which are being used for cures, for medications. So in order to avoid resistances and issues with the immunity. This is valid for European producers. European producers cannot supply. We have the same issues with other countries, and basically these things have been listed. We created, President von der Leyen agreed with President Lula that we will create a working group in order to address these topics and in order to remove the misunderstandings and the obstacles. But believe me, this is basically something which I call not a restriction, but a level playing field. Because we also have the obligations to the European consumers, and we do not allow European companies to basically bring these products on the market.
And just to sum up, the partnership, the environment you mentioned is all about like-minded countries, is based on the principle of the like-minded, right? But momentum on politics can change. Do you think these agreements, this environment can change, can be harmed if the political momentum changes in Brazil?
Look, we have agreements in order to look in them in the complicated times. Usually in the good times when everything works, you don't need an agreement. On the other side, there is the rule which is coming even from the ancient Rome, pacta sunt servanda. So if the agreement is good, it will basically also survive political changes. Because, and what is a good agreement? A good agreement is beneficial for both sides. So nobody usually doesn't want to change agreement which is beneficial. And this is again, and I'm coming back to this like a mutual benefit approach. In business, I learned one thing. If you just try to maximize a profit on the single transaction, you will not get the second one with the same partner. Because this like a me first approach is creating a benefit only from one side. So these zero-sum games that one can win and the second can lose, this is something what doesn't work in business. In business, when you want to have a long-lasting relationship, there should be benefit on the both sides. And this is my answer. If the agreement is good, should be good after decades of negotiations, it will also last despite the political changes. The politicians are coming and leaving. The business is usually staying.
Commissioner, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much.
Esse foi mais um C-Level, programa semanal da Folha. Agradeço ao João Gabriel, que estava aqui conosco hoje. Uma boa tarde a todos.